Haiti has seen protests by police following a failed anti-gang operation that resulted in the deaths of 4 officers, while 8 more were seriously wounded. Italy entered an almost complete lockdown on Monday due to the rise in COVID-19 cases, while also suspending use of the AstraZeneca vaccine as doubts emerge about its safety. A court in Mali's capital, Bamako, ended a much-delayed trial of former coup leader Amadou Sanogo, accused of killing 21 elite soldiers in 2012. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Haiti, where an anti-gang operation conducted last Friday ended in failure for the government of Jovenel Moise. Our correspondent, Lautaro Rivera, brings us more details in the following report.
Operation in Haiti last Friday ended in a major setback for the national government. The operation took place in Village de Dieu, on the outskirts of the metropolitan area of Port-au-Prince. 4 policemen were killed in the operation and 8 were seriously wounded. The criminal gang that calls itself 5 Seconds seized high-caliber weapons and 2 armored vehicles belonging to the national police. According to human rights organizations in the country, there are at least 37 criminal groups, such as 5 Seconds, operating in the national territory. On the day of the incident, groups of agents and former officers of the national police began demonstrating on Delmas Avenue. The police officers denounced the high costs of the failed operation and also criticized the security police of the Moise government. The police joined other sectors of Haitian society that have been demanding the resignation of the president for weeks, now considered a de facto president, especially since, according to the constitution, his presidency ended on February the 7th.
Former de facto president of Bolivia, Janine Áñez, has been sentenced to 4 months pre-trial detention after she was arrested on charges linked to the ousting of former President Evo Morales. In an indictment, prosecutors had originally asked for Áñez and 2 ministers of her year-long de facto government to be held for 6 months as a precautionary measure. Also arrested on Saturday were Áñez's former Energy Minister, Rodrigo Guzman, and Justice Minister, Álvaro Coimbra. On Sunday, a far-right civilian activist, Yace Molina, who the government said led a group participating in the 2019 protests leading to the coup against Evo Morales, was also arrested. Hondurans are awaiting the official results of the presidential primary elections held on Sunday. According to exit polls published by different media outlets, the presidential candidates Xiomara Castro from the Liberty and Refoundation Party, Yanni Rosenthal from the Liberal Party, and Nasri Asfoura from the National Party are the most likely winners of the primary elections. The president of the National Electoral Council, Ana Paula Hall, reported that the official results, which should begin to be announced this Monday, will be used to choose the candidates participating in the general elections on November 28th. The National Institute of Legal Medicine and Forensic Science of Colombia concluded the identification of 8 of the 10 bodies received on March 4th as victims of the bombing carried out by the army in the department of Guaviare. The remains analysed are those received in the municipal capital of Calomar. According to forensic experts, a girl under 16 years of age is among the deceased, but her identity has not yet been determined. The other 7 bodies have already been analysed and identified. The deceased were between 19 and 30 years of age. Groups of mothers gathered in front of government facilities as they have children who've been missing since the bombing. At least 2 lists with the names of the missing children presumed dead are circulating in Guaviare and have been handed over to the Colombian authorities. A high-level commission of the Colombian Ombudsman's Office was sent to the departments of Guaviare and Meta to strengthen the investigation into the high-risk situation of minors in those departments.
We express deep sorrow for the lives of children and young people who continue to be lost in the context of violence. We strongly condemn the actions of groups separated from FARC and other criminal organizations that forcibly recruit children and teenagers. Therefore, I make a strong call to understand that in Colombia the recruitment of children under 18 years of age is a serious violation of international humanitarian law, which must be punished. I also insist that the recruited are victims, not criminals, and there is a special duty to protect them based on the prevalence of their rights.
Paraguayan authorities announced new restrictions to combat the spread of COVID-19. Among the measures are the suspension of on-site classes and traffic restrictions between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. in 24 cities of the so-called red zone, particularly in the city of Asunción. The restrictions will be enforced from Thursday, March 18th to Sunday, April 4th, as decreed this Sunday by the presidency. According to the last report issued, the South American country has registered almost 178,000 cases and over 3,000 fatalities due to COVID-19. Now we continue in Paraguay, where opposition lawmakers in charge of drafting the impeachment charges against President Mario Abdo Benitez and Vice President Hugo Velázquez were set to present the drafts of 2 accusatory documents to lawmakers this Monday. The move coincides with several demonstrations in the Paraguayan capital in support of the impeachment request. A total of 37 lawmakers are expected to vote in favour of the impeachment, but 53 votes are needed for the process to go ahead. Brazil's Socialism and Liberty Party this Monday denounced the lack of justice 3 years after the murder of councilwoman for Rio de Janeiro, Marielle Franco. In a post on Twitter, the party noted it's been 3 years since they took one of us away. 36 months demanding justice for Marielle and Anderson, victims of political violence that does nothing but grow in the country. Marielle Francisco da Silva, known as Marielle Franco, was assassinated on March 14, 2018. She was a Brazilian politician and human rights activist who advocated for the rights of black women and LGBTQI minorities, prioritising the empowerment of poor communities. She was an elected councilwoman of the municipal chamber of the city of Rio de Janeiro. 3 days before she was shot to death, along with her driver Anderson Pedro Matias Gomes, she had filed a complaint against police officers of the 43rd Military Police Battalion for abuse of authority against the inhabitants of the municipality of Hungary. This Monday, Italy suspended the use of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine as a precaution after other European countries did the same, citing complaints of possible side effects. The Italian Medicines Agency highlighted that the measure is temporary, while authorities await the decision of the European Medicines Agency regarding the possible risks. A week ago, several European nations suspended use of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine over concerns the jab is linked to dangerous blood clots. Germany, Italy and France on Monday followed countries including Denmark, the Netherlands and Bulgaria in pausing rollouts of the vaccine. And also this Monday, Italy went into an almost complete lockdown as all regions, except for Sardinia, are either orange or red zones. Rome is red, meaning all schools are closed except for those for students with disabilities, and all non-essential shops and restaurants are also shut. Last fall, the Health Ministry developed a tiered scale of restrictions, classifying individual regions on a weekly basis based on their infection rates, hospital capacity and other criteria. Until recently, only a few hard-hit regions were under full lockdown, but new clusters of highly contagious virus variants have meant more and more regions have passed into the tightest red zone restrictions. The lockdown will be enforced through April 6, including Easter weekend, when it will include the entire national territory. On Monday, demonstrators in Hungary's capital broke a ban on public gatherings to demand an end to the country's lockdown restrictions, even as a surge in COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations sweeps the country. Around 1,000 demonstrators, mostly followers of the far-right Our Homeland movement, which organised the protest, broke through a police cordon and marched to Hungary's parliament in central Budapest, where they demanded an end to pandemic restrictions that have been in effect for more than 4 months and have placed a heavy burden on the country's economy. An additional set of restrictions went into effect last week, including the mandatory closure of most shops, businesses, kindergartens and primary schools. Hungary's service-orientated economy saw a 5.1% decline in GDP last year in the wake of the pandemic.
I can't agree with the government's measures. Everything is a big mess. Testing should be more widespread. The regulations on masks are overblown. But the most important thing is that we cannot work. We are locked down.
On Monday, Somalia received its first shipment of 300,000 doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine destined for frontline workers and those most at risk from COVID-19, according to a statement from the government. The conflict-torn nation has seen coronavirus cases soar 77% over the past month to 9,190, while fatalities have more than doubled to a total of 367. The AstraZeneca jab, manufactured by the Serum Institute of India, was provided under the COVAX initiative, which is working to facilitate vaccine access for poorer countries. This particular vaccine only requires standard refrigeration, making it easier to transport and store.
It has been a tough time for the last 3 months. Every night we were having meetings with UNICEF, WHO. It was a task force who were taking care of every particular on how the vaccine can arrive in our country and the rollout.
It's dedicated particularly to frontline workers and those in most urgent need, but it is only the first of future batches that will address other vaccine demands for Somalia.
Pablo Iglesias, leader of the left party Podemos and a deputy prime minister in Spain's ruling coalition, said Monday he was stepping down from the government to run as head of the Madrid region. Iglesias' surprise announcement came a day after a regional court confirmed the snap poll, which was called last week after the collapse of Madrid's ruling coalition, which groups the right-wing Popular Party and the centre-right Citizens Party. The decision to call early elections was taken by Isabel Díaz Ayuso from the Popular Party, who resigned as Madrid's regional leader on Wednesday, breaking the coalition deal with Citizens and raising questions as to whether other regional right-wing alliances would follow.
I have informed Pedro Sánchez of my decision to step down from my position in the government when the election campaign begins, and that Ione Belarra will take over as head of the Ministry of Social Rights and the 2030 Agenda. I have also passed on that Yolanda Díaz, in addition to continuing in her post as Minister of Labour and Social Economy, will also assume the second vice presidency of the government for Unidas Podemos. Until the start of the campaign, I will focus my efforts on advancing the housing law that we are negotiating in government and on fulfilling some key commitments.
Thousands of protesters gathered outside Australia's parliament in the capital Canberra on Monday as pressure mounts on the Conservative government over its handling of rape allegations levelled at those in the corridors of power. Brittany Higgins, a former government staffer who says she was raped by a colleague in a minister's office, led the demonstrators. Since Higgins came forward with the allegations, she's become an advocate calling for change to the toxic culture inside Parliament. The controversy has placed growing pressure on Prime Minister Scott Morrison, who critics say has fumbled the government's response to the scandals. The government has ordered an independent inquiry into Parliament's workplace culture and established new staff support services, but activists say systemic change is now needed, not just in politics but across Australian society, in order to tackle sexual violence and gender inequality.
Very important for women, children and men around Australia and around the world that violence and sexual assault and aggression against women and children must stop, and men.
A court in Mali's capital Bamako ended a much-delayed trial of former coup leader Amadou Sanogo, accused of killing 21 elite soldiers in 2012. The court, which has not yet issued a verdict, has also ended proceedings against 15 other defendants, citing a 2019 reconciliation law offering amnesty or pardon for specific crimes committed during the 2012 crisis. Sanogo, a former army captain, alongside several other plotters, staged a coup against President Amadou Toumani Touré after an insurgency erupted in the north of the country, but his junta stepped aside under international pressure after a string of northern cities, including Timbuktu, fell to the rebels. The court's decision not to charge Sanogo sparked anger among human rights defenders in the country.
To release Haya, who massacred people, who kidnapped women, who raped them, it is a shame today for Mali, to the point that this date must be inscribed in the history of Mali. I will take the matter to international justice. There the law will be said.
In reality, I'm shocked. I did not expect this because normally, Fusini Diarra said during his hearing, he said clearly in front of everyone that he has 5 Rafales on children, and that he did not even regret it.
A bomb targeting a minibus in Afghanistan's capital exploded on Monday, wounding at least 15 civilians. A spokesman for the Kabul police chief said the minibus was attacked in the Dahan-e-Bag area. The spokesman added that the number of casualties could rise. The attack comes a day after separate bombings of vehicles in the western part of Kabul killed 3 people and wounded 12. The spokesman said an investigation was ongoing, but all the casualties were civilians. No group has immediately claimed responsibility for any of the attacks. Afghanistan is experiencing a nationwide spike in bombings, targeted killings and other violence as peace talks continue in Qatar between the Taliban and the Afghan government.
I was on the way home from the office when the explosion happened. I turned my face and saw a co-star was the target. The victims were crying and they were in critical conditions.
According to multiple local media outlets in Iran, a cargo ship owned by the Islamic Republic Shipping Lines Group was in the Mediterranean en route to Europe when it was hit with an explosive device. Tehran is considering all options in response to the attack, which it believes was conducted by the Israeli regime.
Given the location of the sabotage, there is every reason to think that the occupying regime in Jerusalem is behind this operation. The aggressive behavior of Israel reinforces this assumption. This is a court case that has been presented in a transparent manner. The best way to help resolve this type of issues is by not politicizing them. I advise the UK government, which once took the path of politicizing the case, to allow the legal and judicial process to take its course.
And the Iranian government has warned the United States that time is running out for them to resume the nuclear deal signed in 2015. Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif noted that so far President Joe Biden's administration has done nothing different to its predecessor. The diplomat stressed that the White House is used to imposing its will on the world, but also noted that the Iranian people are used to resisting pressures. Zarif insisted that Washington must take the necessary steps in order to save the nuclear deal before the next Iranian elections in June. In 2018, the Trump administration decided to unilaterally withdraw from the deal and reimpose severe sanctions on the country. On Monday, Ugandan opposition figure Bobi Wine was arrested as he took part in a protest in Kampala. The 39-year-old pop star turned presidential contender had called last week on Ugandans to rise up peacefully and unarmed against President Yoweri Museveni, who won a sixth term in office following elections in January. Several activists from Wine's National Unity platform, wearing business suits and red ties, took part in the brief protest, which was quickly halted by police officers and soldiers. Wine, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, was first taken to a police station before being driven in a police vehicle to his home outside Kampala. Wine was demanding the release of hundreds of his supporters, who he claims were abducted by security forces at the start of the presidential election campaign late last year.
We are non-violent. We want our people back. You kidnap the people of Uganda. They are being tortured. They are being murdered. We are non-violent. And we demand of you to respect the law. We demand of you, police, military, all security operatives, we demand of you to respect the right to life of the people of Uganda. We are non-violent. We are protesting against the injustice.
This Monday marks the 10th anniversary of the terrorist war imposed on Syria by the United States and its allies. During the past 10 years, the war has destroyed a significant part of Syrian infrastructure and displaced thousands from their homes. In the midst of the conflict, the government and the army, alongside the people, have defended their sovereignty and territorial integrity and successfully liberated several regions from Western-sponsored terrorist groups through a series of military offensives. Despite the constant attacks, the government led by President Bashar al-Assad is committed to national reconciliation and dialogue, efforts that are being sponsored by Iran and Russia to resolve the conflict peacefully and return to the path of development. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.